Welcome everybody to our second session of Festival Troubleshooting Tuesdays. So excited to see a couple new faces today. And of course, our wonderful Simon Jones is here, Hess is here, Miss Hallie is here from the Smithsonian. That's awesome. Hey, everybody. All right. Well, just really quickly, I'm going to pass it up to the speakers in just a second to start their content.
Well,
So, hello, everyone.
there you go. Sorry.
Despite all the practice, I still had to get everything up there. So I'm Philippa Rappaport. I am on detail with the Center for Folklife and Cultural Heritage. And in other times of the year, I'm the lead for education and engagement at the Smithsonian Office of Educational Technology. And I'd like to ask Lance and Jacob to come on and introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Lance Costello. I'm a social science analyst with the Office of Digital Technology, Digital Transformation. We just switched, got reorganized. Used to be with Smithsonian Organization and Audience Research and did lots of audience studies across different museums of the Smithsonian and elsewhere, and have been helping the Folklife Festival with their analysis and their evaluation of the Folklife Festival for the last several years. And Jacob?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Shapiro. I was interning with Philippa at the Office of Education Technology, and I'm currently a Master's of Education student at the University of Washington in Seattle. Go Dogs. I currently work for UW. I'm a program coordinator with the rural and tribal partnerships here in Washington State. And so we do education programs throughout the state, and hopefully I've wanted to use sort of some of my experience in evaluations in the past for this project. And yeah.
Thank you. So what we'd like to do today is we want to show you, we had presentation slides that we shared with the whole department to sum up what we learned from evaluation from the festival. And we'd like to start out showing you some of those slides as a way to tell you what we were looking for from the evaluation. So not the actual results, but what we were looking at and why. And then we'd like to do some exercises with you. So then Jacob and Lance will take over and they'll talk really about how to translate data. So once you've gotten all this data, what do you do with it? How can you put it into a report? What are some of the issues that came up from that? And then some recommendations, and we have time for Q&A at the end, but we really encourage you to just, if you have a question, just call it out anytime or put it in the chat. And I'm not sure, just if I'm not seeing something that's in the chat, please just someone let me know it's there and we'll try to answer your questions as we go. Okay. So this is the festival this summer. I'm assuming people know about the Smithsonian Folklife Festival. The theme this summer was Indigenous Voices of the Americas, and we had a team of 4 working on the actual doing the surveys, which was Jacob, and we had 2 other interns or staff members working on it, and myself. We also had guidance from 2 staff members who had done it previously. That was Jim Deutsch and Mary Lynn. And Lance really guided us from his department and his colleague Ikuko Uyutani. Okay. So what we did is we had to figure out, we put all the questions into Qualtrics and we loaded that onto iPads. And then we worked off of these iPads at the festival itself. In terms of location, we had 4 different locations that we split ourselves up into. And so we put together a schedule to make sure that we would have someone at each of those locations. We figured out, oh, I should say we also had volunteers. And so if there were volunteers, they would join a staff member at each of those locations. We tried not to have anyone be alone because only one time we had a sort of an unhappy person who like was not nice, was inappropriate with the surveyor. And so what we did is we tried to go with this schedule, but if it would leave someone alone, then instead we would pair up and make sure that no one was alone. Everyone was within earshot of another person in case it got uncomfortable, which it never did. Okay, we also had to think about how many surveys we needed to complete each day. So we had a goal of a certain amount per day that we needed to cover over the 6 days of the festival. And Lance will walk you through some of the particulars of how we got to that number that we needed to keep it well, he'll tell you more, but how it would work with previous years so that we wouldn't mess up the data when we're looking across years. And then our questions were broken down into themes. We wanted to know about demographics. We wanted to know what people were learning. We wanted to know how they were using the website and was it useful for them. And then we wanted to know about their overall experience. Okay, so now, as I said before, I'm not going to go through all the details of specifically what we learned, but more what we were trying to find out as you're thinking about how you want to survey the people who come to your events. So we had an overall amount of how many we completed. We were looking at how many were male and female, how many hours they spent at the festival, were they first-time visitors or returning visitors, and why they came. We wanted to know demographics, so we looked at how people identified by race, Hispanic or Latino. We also looked at gender and age. We also wanted to know where our people were coming from. So where are they in the US, non-US? And then we doubled in on local. I kept the animations between slides that Jacob did because I think they're kind of awesome. And anyway, did you see how he focused in on DC area? So we looked at Maryland, DC, Virginia, and then this is probably my favorite slide that he did. We drilled down even more into zip codes. So this information really helped us think about where are we advertising? Where do we need to focus more for next year to make sure we have representation across our whole area? So, and we got all that information just by asking their zip code. Okay. We also looked at there, more, oh, I know why we're showing this is because we also started to compare from previous years. So how did our visitorship change over time? We wanted to know what people learned from their visit. What did they know about Indigenous peoples and cultures previously? What did they learn? How much are they inspired to learn more? We took open-ended comments from people because, as much as it's nice to be able to graph everything, when you get individual comments, you can really get even more information. We wanted to know where were our sustainability efforts working, and which ones. Comments about that. I can see Jacob smiling. I think he's appreciating his animations and transitions here. We wanted to know, did people know about our sponsorships? Was our advertising of sponsorships effective? So we had information about that, and then what types of advertising of sponsorship did they notice the most? Was our website useful for visitors? Did they use it to find out the schedule and all of that ahead of time? One thing that was really important to us, this is also, were they using the online marketplace? Did they know about it? And then after that, we wanted to know, so we just do this festival during the summer. We wanted to know, would people come back during the rest of the year? Would they want in-person programming? Would they want online programming? And so we asked some questions to find out about that. If we're doing future programming, what types of programming would you want to see? Both in person and online. Okay. And then we asked people about their overall experience of the festival. We did something unwittingly here, which is that we changed our scale. And then we had to figure out, how do we actually convey that across years if we changed what the words were with our scale. So Lance and Jacob will talk about that in a little bit too. Something else we added, so because my background is in education, we use these Harvard Project Zero thinking routines a lot in our programming. And one of them is, I used to think, now I think. And so we tried it out for the festival evaluation. And I think in general, we decided it was pretty effective and successful, even though not everyone answered it. So some people just didn't want to think that much, didn't want to spend as much time giving feedback, but the people that did, it was generally worth it. And so we got questions about general learning, like here someone's talking about representation, and people talked about their inspiration to continue learning. So here someone said, they want to learn more. We also found people responding to specific things they had learned. So here someone was commenting about how diverse backstrap weaving traditions are that they had learned about. Specific facts, like one person said, I didn't know lacrosse was a native sport. And then we got a lot of comments that were about changes in values, attitudes, and feelings. And these I particularly liked, and I kept thinking, these are the kinds of things that would probably be very useful for funding applications. Like, I used to think my 10-year-old son would not be willing to learn how to make thread from wool from a woman he couldn't communicate with. Now I think my son learned how to communicate to learn a new skill from someone when he couldn't speak their language. And then another one that's so short, but so great. I used to think people were scary. Now I think people are beautiful. And then we followed up our presentation with just some recommendations from what we had found in terms of logistics, like access, fencing, water stations, that sort of thing. We had a set of recommendations for programming, which usually everything was more of the same because people loved it, but that's great too. And then we had some thoughts about evaluation for the following year, because for our team, it's usually, it's not necessarily consistent staff across the years. And so we try to put together something to help people in future years. And then we concluded with some just brief, comments. So in total, what we shared with our staff we did a live presentation, and then we shared the slides, some of which you've seen today. We also created a final report. And then we created something we called it an at-a-glance document, and I'll show you that in just a sec. And the reason we did this is because the final report was it was 70 pages long before we got to the appendices. And so we thought not everyone in our staff was going to take the time to read 70 pages, but instead we could show them this smaller document that could give them the highlights and then send them back to the fuller document for the areas that they're interested in. And we also did this to put in an area, we wanted to have feedback from staff about the evaluation and what we found. And then we also had a document of recommendations for future staff. So I want to just quickly show you the at a glance sheet. So what this is we split it down into festival area of interest, and we broke it down into sections: advertising, social media, web, schedule, publications, marketplace, sustainability, concession stands, whatever it is that obviously that you want to find out about. But we broke it down into the sections of festival area interest, accessibility, logistics, education and learning, and then surveys, and then overall. And then what we did is we had a section for praise and keep, issues, opportunities, recommendations, and then we sent people back to the pages in the full document so they could find out more information. We had a column for additional information, and then we have our column for staff comments. So here's one. For example, one of our recommendations that we got from visitors was they wanted to see TikTok content. And a staff member said, well, actually, we're not allowed to use TikTok. So, those things are really important to know, right? So that's just an example of what we did. So now I would like to pass it on to Lance to talk more about translating the data into your report.
Right. So the first question that Philippa came to me with was, what is the sample size that we need to have for this to be a survey that is meaningful and useful? And she had come with uh, with her research about last year, we had 10 days, had to collect 400 responses. And this year it's only going to be 6 days. So do we do fewer responses? How do we approach this problem? And on the next slide, you'll see the mathematical formula that you could use to calculate it if you were so inclined, but would suggest instead going to on the next slide, any of a number of online calculators where you can really simply just enter in a few small pieces of information. All of these pieces of information are going to be based upon your overall goal. In talking with Philippa, the goal was really to have an overview of this year to feel comfortable that the percentages are reasonably accurate, and primarily to compare to previous years and see how trends have gone. Is there a different visitation pattern, or are people reacting to the festival in a different way? So in the next slide, you'll see a kind of some information about each of these inputs that you want. The first one, the confidence level, this is really just the measure of how certain you are that the results are accurate. For social science research, the standard is 95%, which means there's a 5% chance that the sample that you collected is going to be not representative of the full group, but that is just the way that's going to happen if you're using statistics. The next input is really the margin of error. We chose a margin of error of 5%. So anything that is 50% could be anywhere between 45 and 55 in reality. The population proportion. This is generally just use 50% if you're not sure. This is something where the results at 50%, if your survey responses are 50% of people were women, it's it's going to have the highest amount of variance compared to 2% of people saying that they really didn't like the festival. That's not going to have as much of a margin of error, and you can just kind of ignore that for at the early stages of doing the evaluations. And the final entry is really the population size. Folklife Festival, as noted earlier in the presentation, has a very high visitation, so we left this blank as a unlimited, infinite population size, and that works because it's over tens of thousands of visitors. If you have for your festival a much smaller expectation of visitation, you can go ahead and enter that number in, and it may give you a smaller sample size needed. On the next page, we should see the results for the Folklife Festival, and they needed 385, or they rounded it up to 400 over the course of the 6 days. And now I'm going to turn it over to Jacob, who is going to start looking at some of the activities that he wants to share.
Thank you, Lance. Thank you, Philippa. So I'm going to send in this document. And actually, before I start, I just want everyone to raise their hand if they have any familiarity with Excel. You can raise your hand physically through the chat. You can do a fun reaction. I'm gonna do a fun reaction. I'm gonna do a rocket. Okay. All right, we got one. Thank you, Amanda. Cool, cool. Angela. Cool. All right. So this is perfect. I'm not gonna say I'm a master of Excel. I'm not gonna state that, but I just wanted to make this activity so we can have, more experience, gaining more knowledge about this, and just utilizing Excel and its features. So I'm going to send in this file right now. There we go. Hopefully everyone is able to download it. I promise it's not malware. You just click on it. And on the first, you should be on the sheet that says unclean data sheet. And I'm going to also share my screen as well. So I'm going to share it right now. So what you should see is this. The title should be Practice Data September 10th. Does everyone, you can also verbally say as well if you have this up. If you're able to access it, okay. We'll also share this in the forum. Good. Yep. And so this is what you start out with. This is what we had after we exported this from Qualtrics. I was going to show Qualtrics, but I realized, I didn't want to eat up too much time. So maybe we could do it at the end. But this is what we had when we had unclean data as an Excel file. You would typically see a CSV, a comma separated value. But this is the way that we did it, so we can do graphs through Excel and not through other programs like R or Stata. So as you see this, I would like everyone to do this with me. This is supposed to be very interactive. So we do Control A, and I'm just going to copy this over, Control C, and I'm going to put this all over to this clean data sheet. Just going to be the same sheet. From there, once you're on clean data, you go to clear, you have it all highlighted. And you see how this is really weird formatting. All the chunks all the columns have weird sizes or rows. And so I'm going to do clear formats. I'm just going to make it simple. It still looks really ugly to look at. So for us, I'm going to highlight the columns all the way up to I. From there, we do delete. Delete that. We're going to keep this column right here. This is response ID. I'll show you guys what to do with this next. So from B to H, highlight that. And delete. Cool. Oh, wait. I'm going to delete this as well. We only had one language when we were doing the survey. So this is actually the data I showed you is the survey data that we had. If you were eager enough and have knowledge in using other programs, you can do this as well and make your own graphs. But I'm just going to show you guys how to make maps, visualizing race, and overall experience. And then we're going to explain more about that later. So for talked about response ID, these are the IDs that Qualtrics sends us. Qualtrics is our survey tool that we used. But I'm just gonna make it simple, and I'm just gonna for row 3, and I hope everyone's doing this with me as well. Let's just do 1 and then 2. Now I'm gonna highlight both of these. So rows 3 and 4. I'm gonna click this little bomb here until it looks like a little cross right there. I'm gonna double click that. Whoa, autofills the series. So that goes, so this makes all the response IDs have the corresponding number. So this is supposed to mean this respondent 38. And this is really important because this is actually how we get the count. And through that count, we're able to visualize this. Also, I'm going to just keep these two rows on top. Usually you would just delete this row right here. You don't have to do that though. I'm going to keep it so at least we know what question we're on. All right. So the reason why I also separate this is when we're doing pivot tables. And also raise your hand. I've used pivot tables, the people who've used Excel. Cool. All right. Hi, Sharon. Sorry, this is my boss. So from here, just could be, you can also do filter as well to make this a lot easier. So then through filtering, you can also take out any blanks, since there were a couple blanks that we've had for people who just didn't want to answer questions. But I'm gonna move on to creating maps. Okay, so this is our first exercise, is creating a graph from the data that we have. Where we got this data, how I made the maps was it took a while because I had to convert the postal code into states, because there wasn't any way to graph postal code onto Excel. It just looks really weird and doesn't really work. That's for the entirety of the US. You can do it for each state though. This is what we're gonna do for exercise 2. But for exercise 1, I just want you guys to make a map of the US through this data. So how do you do that? I will show you guys. So I'm gonna highlight this entire section right here. I'm gonna go to insert and do maps. Click filled map. And there you go. You have a map of the US. Super simple. Let me know if you guys are still on this part, if you guys need any more help. If you were able to make this map, just please let me know. Cool. Yeah, it's super simple for making this. And then you can also add data labels. So I'm just gonna move this right here. So this is to show which states there are. Obviously for a lot of the Northeast corridor is a lot smaller, so there wasn't enough space. So when we actually put this on the report and for the slides, we ended up adding the states, and it was just literally making arrows and putting that. But this was a way for us to show where the spread of the response were. And as you can see, they're essentially located mostly in Maryland. Virginia. Let's see if that works. There you go. I just had to type in Virginia. I don't know why VA wasn't working for that. But yeah, there you go. And moving on to exercise 2, this is to make a map using the same technique of DC. Same thing. I don't know why it has. There you go. You might get an error screen. That's okay. It's just I don't know why it's doing that. But I was getting this when I was practice running it. But this is actually, if I'm gonna zoom in, this is to show the postal codes of DC and showing where the respondents were centrally located.
I have a
So,
question for you, Jacob.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so most of our folks obviously are, based in North Carolina. So, the all of the states, like that data probably isn't quite as applicable, but these zip codes would be, figuring out, if
Yeah,
you're in county, if you're out of county, yada yada. So how
it
do you
does work
suggest that?
regionally. It
Yeah.
does work regionally as well.
Yeah, so
But
what's your advice for that? Like, picking, like, doing it by zip code? Is there some sort of like way to do neighborhoods or?
yeah, I can show you. So this exercise 3 is through counties.
Perfect.
So that's the next part I was going to go over, but you can do zip code, you can do cities. Excel is very flexible, but the important thing is that you have to mention it, what you're doing on the top here. That's
So
how
you just have to have
yeah.
your titles and then it'll kind of,
Yeah.
the map will just kind of auto fill in.
It will. Excel's very smart like that. Once I show you guys Data Wrapper, a way to make it publishable, like an online format, that's when it gets really cool because then you're able to show people outside of Excel. But yeah, so, and that's why I also have country, is to show this is the US, just in case they think hi HI is in Japan or something. I don't know, but they think Hawaii is in Japan. You have to be exact with it. But yeah, so this is for, I guess, for zip codes, and you can also change this up. But for this next one, for exercise 3, we're going to be using another format that I use, which is called Data Wrapper. So this took a long process as well. This is a very long one. This was every county based on people's postal codes that they gave us, their FIPS code. I don't know what that stands for, but that's just basically their county code. So how do I do this? I'll show you guys. So if you click onto here, this is hyperlinked. And see this. So Data Wrapper, you can do hundreds of graphs. This doesn't have to also be maps, but I use Data Wrapper mostly for the maps. So you click the one on the left, choropleth map. Okay, awesome. And then you would do USA. And let me know if I'm going too fast. And then so once you get to this section, you click USA Counties 2022. 2023, they changed it up, and I used FIPS because I just preferred to use that. It was a lot easier to transfer over from postal code. So you click proceed. And this is where you would add your data. There are ways to convert. There's like online applications to convert your FIPS because you can't really do counties. You can't just say, I'm from Santa Barbara, California. You can't just do Santa Barbara County and it will show you Santa Barbara County. You have to actually find their code. That's why I use it in numerical format. So I'm gonna highlight this, Control C, and then I'm gonna Control V right here. Cool. This should all be good. You click visualize. There you go. The colors look a little weird, but that's totally fine. You can make it more manageable. But these are the counties of everyone who came to the Folklife Festival. You could get really exact and precise with this. And this is just an example, but you can also, there's a lot of tools you can use, make it movable or zoomable. And then you can also add, let's see what you can do. You can add a little map in this on the left to show where everyone is. And I also I've published it on here on the Excel file, my version, my map that I made that I was thinking of presenting, but we didn't use this map. This is what it was looking like. So you can see that we have the legend up here. And if you highlight over a county, it will show the amount of people that are here. And this is just online. This is just a link that you can do online. Let's say I really like this map. This looks beautiful. I don't even have a title. Counties. You can edit the description. You do labels as well. So let's say, you see how I have Los Angeles, DC, Miami? You can add those. So as you can see, you can have LA, Washington, New York. You can make this Houston, Texas. So let's say I want to show Houston, Texas for some reason. You can really show it. You can show any town that you want. You can also show towns that are relevant to you. From there, you can just do proceed. And then it's published. Let's see. Oh, I have to log in. I'm not logged in right now. But once you're logged in, you're able to publish and send this link, which is how I made this one. So yeah, just a neat little exercise for just making a map for public facing. This is for the public. You can embed this onto your website as well. But yeah, I hope that part was helpful. And I just wanted to go over race and how we're supposed to visualize race in this with our next exercises. So as you can see on this sheet, this would be visualizing racial categories. And so if from here, this is why I wanted to make a response ID, because this is how you can use it with pivot tables to get your count. So for this exercise, I would like everyone to create a pivot table with the response ID and question 9. How do you do that? I'll show you guys right now. So you go from here. Oh, I'm going too fast. You go to insert, you click pivot table, and it'll show this pop up. So this is asking for the table that you'll be using. Where's this data coming from? Well, we have the data. We have it right here. So you just click clean data. Oh wait, I have to, yeah. You click clean data, and then you do Control A. This copies everything. And now you have it as a table that you can use to make really great tables that can turn into graphs. So how would I do that? Let's say, so for create pivot table for response ID and Q9, I click response ID. And then I click right here, Q9. Whoa, but this looks weird. Don't worry, it's okay. So you would go from response ID to values. Still, it looks a little weird. All right. Now create a bar chart. How would you do that? Go right here. You just highlight that. Now, but I want you guys to know something. Once I make this, you might already be like, this is gonna look like a weird bar chart. That's kind of the point. I want to show you guys what this is looking like. So as you can see, this is terrible. This is not, this is illegible. Also, we asked for multiple races. So that's gonna configure into this. So what we had to do when we were making this, especially if you do a select all, the apply question, this will affect how you visualize it, and you have to do more cleaning from there. Also, you can, from pivot tables, by the way, you can delete the blanks and other categories that you were not interested in. So you do that right here. And it also gets the count. But I don't want to take up too much of your time from here. So I'm just going to insert the data and show you guys how to properly visualize race. So let me see. That's good. I have it on another document. So right. Oh, it was right here. Sorry. So you just do right here. You highlight this portion. And then you do recommended charts. You can do a cluster bar, or you can do a pie chart. Now for this question, I want you guys to verbally say, which one do you think will look better? A pie chart or a bar? Or maybe this bar graph? Which one do you guys prefer? I'm gonna just show both. Just gonna give you guys a lot of options right now. Okay. I haven't read the chat yet. A chart. Which kind of chart, Angela? The bar chart or the pie chart? Pie chart. Okay, cool. Who here agrees doing a pie chart for visualizing race? I don't see hands right now. Pie. Okay, cool. So from this point, I want to show you guys I just want to bring in Lance for him to explain how we should visualize race when we're doing these sort of evaluations and impact data reporting. So I'm just gonna go right here. And, oh wait.
So, thanks for the intro, Jacob. On the next slide, you'll see what happens if we were to use a pie chart. If our total is over 100%, then on the next slide, Jacob, with the if we were to use a pie chart on something that has a total of over 100%, this is of 150%. Because people can mark more than one option, there's going to be more than 100% in the total if you add them all up. And you can see the 25% for this fictional category does not look like a quarter of the pie chart. You would expect on the next slide the percentage to look more like that with basically a right angle, and that's because on the actual calculations that Excel is doing to fit everything into the pie chart is turning the 25% really into 17%, and that's how it visualizes the amount of space it's going to give out of the 100%. This applies also if you're going to use a stacked bar chart. On the next tab, you can see what happens when you do have categories that add up to 100%, the 25% lines up right where it should. But as you go higher and higher, that really distorts the length of the bar. So just be careful when you're using a pie chart, a stacked bar chart, or anything else that is meant to be a visualization of 100%, that what you have isn't overlapping, that it isn't mark all that apply, that people that are responding can in fact only give one response. And so as you saw the chart that Daniel did use, it was actually the bar chart.
Cool. Thank you. So yeah, so for this, we would prefer not to use a pie chart. It would just be, we would want to use the bar graph or bar chart for this example. But just be aware of that when you're doing any question. It doesn't just have to be race, but also, you know, for any questions that you do have select all that apply when you're doing a survey. Just considering how you are showing your results is really important for this. Any questions from that? Okay, cool. So I'm gonna move on to our last exercise, which is our overall experiences. So I would like you guys to do a similar exercise, and I'm not gonna show you guys how to do it. I want you guys to do exercise 1 by yourselves. So I'm gonna give you guys, let's say, a couple minutes. I'm gonna give you guys 3 minutes to do this. Oh my God, I don't know what that was. 3 minutes to create pivot table with response ID and Q32. And from there, create a bar chart of this data. And once everyone's done, we're gonna have an open discussion just to see, is there a skew, and whether this impacts the data. So I'm gonna give you guys a couple minutes to do this. Yeah, I'm gonna 30 seconds. I wasn't really keeping count, but so I'm gonna screen share right now. And totally fine if you're not done yet. I'm just I want to just set this up and show you guys something that's interesting about this was it's gonna look a little wonky and it's hard to see this. But we used a 1 through 5 scale for this question, which was asking the overall experiences of the festival. So this is looking a little weird, obviously because awesome is on the left and not on the right. So we wanted to move it to where positive is. So what I'm gonna do for that is I'm just gonna delete this one. This is my pivot table, by the way. You would also might have noticed that it might look weird if you had this included. How would you rate overall festival experience? So that's just because we have a count for that because that's our question because we kept these 2 rows. So it just gave us a random count for that. So for that, I would just filter out the blanks through the pivot table. And you should get that. So I'm gonna move this awesome over down to below a positive. Click insert, do recommended charts. And there you go, you have a cluster column. So what do people notice about this? Is there skew? What is the skew? Can someone, you can unmute your mic as well. What's happening in this? Overall. So I'm not reading the chat right now, wait. But this would be a left skew. So left refers to the tail, by the way. So it may look like there's a lot going on the right, but that's not what it means. That's just deceiving. The statisticians have weird ways for wording things, or they're really simple about it. But yeah, so there's basically no one who picked fair or neutral. And there's actually 0 people that picked, they had poor experience. So we had an overwhelmingly high amount of people who said that they had a positive or awesome experience, which is awesome. That's great. I mean, that's great to know. I mean, that it would be terrible if it was all the way, everyone had like an okay time. But that's also kind of not very helpful for us. So from exercise 2, and I asked this in this last question, how does this impact the data? What if we want comparing 2 variables? So I want you guys to make another pivot table. And this time I want you guys to add question 25. Question 25 was asking if you've had any previously knowledge about indigenous languages or cultures. We can go over to clean data as well, and I can show you guys what that is. So how much did you previously know about indigenous people and cultures? This was on a scale that was, I believe, none, a little, a fair amount, and a lot. And then a lot, I am indigenous. Those were the options for the questions. So I'm gonna give you guys a couple minutes to do that as well. And we're gonna come back and I'll show you guys what this means.
Do people need to be walked through it again, how to do it, or no?
Yeah, if you guys, I can do a walkthrough as well. I just wanted to test.
Just throwing it out.
Do you guys want to walk through? I can't see anyone's hands, but okay. I'll give you guys a couple minutes. And just to create the pivot table, you don't have to create the cluster bar if you don't have time, but just want to see how fast you can do this. So I'm gonna give you guys a hint as well. You can do Q32 as a row and Q25 as a column. Or you can, that's how I would do it for this one. Or you can do the opposite. And remember to filter out blanks and the question itself. Recommended charts, view cluster column. Cool. So this shows so what does this show? I'm just curious on what you guys think. What does this mean? What would this graph show? Yeah. Two. So it shows the count. It shows the count of people. Sorry, I just got a message. But it doesn't really highlight too much for people who are fair and neutral. So this really, so what I'm gonna do for that is I can edit this data. You can delete this. Because it just kind of makes it messy to look at. So I'm gonna move this over. Insert again. Okay, cool. It's a lot better to look at. So it shows that people who were identified as indigenous and knew a lot about the culture had a more awesome experience. It also showed that people who knew a fair amount about the festival had an awesome experience as well. But this doesn't really show a lot on people who were the opposite. People who didn't have a good time and what their knowledge of indigenous cultures were. So really, this graph doesn't show a whole lot between positive and awesome. So, and this affected most of our data when we wanted to compare overall festival experience to other variables. And you can see that in the report as well. It was hard for us to see any difference between racial categories. People who identified different races, they seem to have all awesome and positive experiences because overall, people at the festival had an awesome and positive experience. So this is where I transfer over to Lance to explain why this is an issue and how we can make this better using Smithsonian resources. So I'm just gonna go over to his slide. And take it away.
Right. So at the beginning of the process, Jacob read through the questionnaire and looking at the questions from last year and rightfully saw the scale that we had used in prior years for fair, good, excellent, superior, and said that's not a Likert scale. There is no midpoint. There's 3 things on the good side and 2 things on the negative side. Let's straighten this out and make this a true Likert scale. And you see the result in 2024 for fair, neutral, positive, awesome, which is a much better Likert scale. Unfortunately, that Likert scale has that skew that really is overly concentrated on the awesome and positive. So what we had developed over several years was the overall experience rating, which is on the left. And that distinction between the top 3, good, excellent, superior, really came from noticing the way that people are visiting cultural venues and that generally people are very positive about their experience. And what we wanted to do was really identify who was having an amazing time, who was having a fairly good but middling time, and who was having a somewhat less successful visit. And that's where the kind of almost like a Geiger counter kind of reading where we went from good to excellent to superior to really stretch that out and to kind of create a more normal curve between the top three categories. On the next slide, you kind of see a little bit more of like kind of a generic version of the way that these two scales are going to generally play out. The OER scale that we created is generally going to create excellent 0.4 as the median, with about half of the people above and half of the people below, more or less, depending on how positive and how negative the experience is. But it's going to really focus in on excellent as the most common answer. Whereas in the tilted scale, we're getting a lot of awesome, which is great for understanding how visitors experience the festival overall. But when you're trying to delve in and say, okay, so what really made it a positive and what was a detraction, and trying to dig through and do comparisons of different variables with the rating, you're going to have, as Jacob found, a lot of difficulty finding the things that really pushed people's experience to that next level, where because just so many people are identifying their visit as awesome. Feel free to ask any questions about this or anything else. I think the next slide is our wrap up. So we're on to question and answer.
Thank you so much for that, guys. That was awesome. Let me jump in really quickly. I'm going to share. We have a little evaluation form just in case anyone needs to hop off. If all of my folks, all the participants could just take your phones out really quickly, or chat. Really, just in case anyone has to pop off, please just go ahead and scan this QR code or open up that Google Doc I just put in the chat. So you can give us your quick kind of week 2 evaluation. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for being here. It was amazing. For my folks, for the participants, I just wanted to let you know that next week's session is going to be on volunteer management. Same time, same day. It's always on Tuesdays, always at noon. So if you're interested in this, we've got some really cool things lined up. Otherwise, you'll get an email from me on Monday that recaps what we did today, resends everyone's contact information, and definitely reach out to me or anyone on the Uplift, the Smithsonian side, anyone that you need support from in the next few weeks. We're here to help you out. All right. Well,
Thank you.
so
Thanks
much,
for having
everyone.
us.
Thank you, guys.